And remember the faces that you're next to, even though we have masks on. This is an important moment for our community. So first, let's set some ground rules. We're going to adhere to the CDC guidelines of social distancing. As I see, we're doing pretty well right now. We must remain 6 feet away from our neighbors as much as possible, and wear face masks unless you're up here speaking. And if you feel like you need to wear a face mask and you're up here speaking, that's fine. Just speak really loudly. At any point, feel free. Oh, no. Up here at the table, we have some water as well as bug spray, some lyric sheets. We're going to have a little sing-along at the end, so at some point during our time, if you don't mind making your way up here, and also signing your name as well as your email onto the clipboard if you'd like to stay in our network. We'd like to build on this event. So, it is no secret that we are living in a hurting world. I'm sure that many of you have had some difficult discussions with loved ones this week about why this movement is so important, and that it is specifically important that we declare Black Lives Matter. We have all seen some angry reactions on social media regarding this movement. Though we do not anticipate any community backlash, we may unfortunately get a few hecklers. There is no reason to be afraid because we are standing up for what is right and what is good. Again, our intent is to keep this a friendly and peaceful event, and I would ask that all attendees not lash out at any hecklers, but simply ignore if the situation arises. Thank you. At the end of today's rally, please join us for some upbeat music as we hold our signs in peaceful protest. To get us started, I'd like to turn the mic over to Cindy, who will read our mission statement.
Good morning. My name is Cindy Moores. I'd like to share some words from the Black Lives Matter organization around the history and context of Black Lives Matter. In 2013, 3 radical Black organizers, Alicia Garza, Patrice Coulors, and Opal Tometi, created a Black-centered political will and movement building project called #Black Lives Matter. It was in response to the acquittal of Trayvon Martin's murderer, George Zimmerman. Black Lives Matter Foundation, Inc. is a member-led global organization in the US, UK, and Canada, whose mission is to eradicate white supremacy and build local power to intervene in violence inflicted on Black communities by the state and vigilantes. It is an affirmation of Black folks' humanity, their contributions to this society, and their resilience in the face of deadly oppression. We are not officially connected with the Black Lives Matter organization, but we fully support their goal of creating a just world where all Black people are free from state-sanctioned violence and from white violence. Please visit blacklivesmatter.com for more information.
Thank you, Cindy. So to get us started with our speakers, I would like to invite up our Vice Chief of the Acoustic Band of Micmac, Richard Syllaboy.
I was told that first after Dave. Thank you. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Good to see such a nice crowd here today. And it is a very important thing that we're here for. And Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. We, as Native people, I'm from the Acoustic Band of Micmac, and it's a tribe that spread from Quebec to Newfoundland. And at one time, the Micmac people were 100,000 strong from Quebec to Newfoundland. They surveyed back in the mid to late 1600s. The census showed that there was only 1,800 Micmacs remaining. So we had a time around 1603 and then another one at 1611. And the people that we went to for help, the Europeans that come over, we went, the native people went to them for help and ended up with just disease, blankets, and food that was no good. So it's been a long while. The Jesuits used to come in and they would hand out alcohol, and they would just sit back and watch the Micmac people drink this alcohol, and the way they acted, you know, it brought violence and against each other, and they would have violence within the home and against the children, and they would just sit there and watch that. The biggest part for me was that when I was young, the young people coming out of the residential schools in Nova Scotia would come to Maine because they had lost their language, they lost their culture, they didn't know their family, because the residential schools used to come right into the home, and they'd take out these children, 3, 4, 5 years old, and they'd keep them there until they were 16, 18 years old. So these people coming out of the schools, they came to Maine. My siblings would meet them, bring them home. And of course, I was the youngest of the family, and I would lay there in bed, and they would tell these horror stories about what happened to them and what happened to other children. And they'd be totally, you know, devastated. They couldn't speak their language. They couldn't speak to their siblings if their siblings were there. They had to work all day, every day, and also when they did something wrong, the priest and the nuns would beat them. When that was coming to an end in the 60s, there was one cemetery that was bulldozed because there were so many dead bodies in there from the native people. One of the schools was torn down, and one wall was filled with infant skeletons, where these children were abused and impregnated, and the infants killed. Now, because of those stories, I hated religion. As a child, I thought Catholic was the only religion. So I hated the Catholic religion. I hated the priests. I hated the nuns. I hated God for allowing that to happen. And it wasn't until 20 years ago that I accepted a higher power in my life. Prior to that, for the first 50 years of my life, I'd challenge God, I'd swear at him, curse at him, and I would, my family would walk right away from me when I started talking about my opinion of God. And they figured that bolt of lightning was coming down, and they didn't want me nowhere near it. But it was 20 years ago, I hit a situation where I reached out and asked God for help, and my life changed from that day to this day. It's just been getting better and better, and I have a good relationship today with my higher power, and I call the Creator. I commune with the Creator every day, multiple times a day, and it's good. I can do it outside. I don't need to go to a church or a building or anything. So, but that's some of the biggest things that's happened to my people, and it's been devastating for a lot of us. You know, so it's for me. I grew up in this area. I knew that I was different, you know, because we did different things. I mean, we had a lot of alcohol in the house, and whenever I was going to town, you know, I never seen anybody out there in their yard, you trying to beat each other senseless, like I seen out in the yard of my place. And I hated alcohol. I said that I was never going to be like them. I tried to separate myself from my siblings, and that didn't work. By the time I was 12 years old, I was a full-blown alcoholic. And I lived that life for 40 years. But today everything is pretty good. I grew up in Littleton, went to Littleton School. There were comments about my nationality. There were comments about being different. There were comments about being Indian. But I had an older brother that went to that school, and I had an older sister. We only had one sister out of a family of 8. She was tough as nails, so she went to the school ahead of me and kind of made a path for me. So when I come to school, I was a fighter as well, and whenever there was any insults or anything going on, I didn't stand there and argue. I was ready to fight, and it's been that way all my life. And believe me, being an Indian, being overweight, going through the cities, and just having that attitude, there's a lot of times that I could fight my way out of a bar room or something like that. But those days are over. The problems that I've had here in this area with racism is employment. It was difficult to get jobs at times. I worked for a farmer on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Thursday, I was hitchhiking in town. He drove right past me. I knew he seen me. We made eye contact when he was going by. I stand there with my thumb up. So I said, that's just norm for the way Native people are treated here in this area. In 2004, my landlord's father lived up over my apartment. Did you bring my drink over, please? Right there by Miller. Anyways, he wanted my apartment so they wouldn't renew my lease. And in doing so, I ended up homeless for a few months, 5 months, I guess. Excuse me, my throat gets dry from speaking. During those 5 months, I stayed with the Ropers for a few weeks. But the point that I'm making is that I tried to get an apartment here in town of Houlton, and I qualified for low-income housing. I qualified to be in these elder apartments, and I believe there's 7. And I tried to get an apartment in all of these complexes. Every one had an apartment available. Everyone had an individual that would take me and show me an apartment. And every one of those people told me that they could not make the decision to whether or not to lease me that apartment, and that they would get back to me. Nobody, none of them, ever called me back and let me know that there's an apartment available. So I was homeless for about 5 months until my tribe put some housing in Littleton, and because I was homeless, I was qualified to be one of the first people in there. And that's the kind of things that we've run into all of our lives. Back in the late 70s, there was an article in the local paper that the Indians were no good. They were a bunch of drunks. They were lazy. They wouldn't work. And it just went on and on. So it's we've had a lot of violence against our people. My siblings would get downtown and a carload of people would stop. Carload of people would stop, pick fights with them. all my siblings, including my sister, learned to fight at a real young age and had to fight our way through. So it's been hard, and being treated differently, and knowing you're treated differently, knowing there's racism in this town, in this county, and of course I have a lot of friends. I was walking through Walmart. My granddaughter's 8 years old, and everybody, "Hi Richard, hi Richard." My granddaughter says, "Grampy, do you know everybody in this town?" And I says, "No, but I think everybody knows me." Because my alcoholism, it's anonymous. Now, nobody knows I'm an alcoholic. They knew I was an alcoholic when I was staggering up out of the jungle, and going after another bottle or something like that. So it's that kind of life that, it brought on the racism and prejudice that's here. It's just under the surface, People don't show it. People will say, "Nah, there ain't no racism here." But when you walk into a store and this little boy, he was making a lot of noise in his car, and they were just ahead of me, and the clerk was waiting on them, and the clerk says, "Oh, he's making a lot of noise. He sounds like a bunch of wild Indians."
Jesus.
And I questioned her, and I asked to talk to the manager about it. And the manager says that he didn't like my attitude,
Jeez.
and that I was complaining for nothing, that it was no big deal. Anyways, I gave him a piece of my opinion from when I was back then, and left. So that's about it for me. I appreciate girls asking me to come up and share and giving me the time to do so. And again, I'm glad to see a good turnout. And Black Lives Matter, Native Lives Matter, and all lives matter. A lot of the Native people, Native women, are being taken. They just disappear, and they don't, but nothing is done about it. Nothing is done about these Native people. In the cities, sometimes right on the reserves, and we need things like this going on in Indian country as well. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Next, we will have the Reverend David Hutchinson of the Houlton Unitarian Universalist Church. And I'd also like to say thank you to the Unitarian Church for the use of the sound equipment. We really appreciate it. So, thank you.
I agreed to say a few words today, and I intend to do just that. Just say a few words. It's always a good idea to have time limit.
Was there time limit? Did I go over, or do I have some time left?
And I'm just putting myself on a time limit, Richard. Ministers have a reputation for sometimes going long. So I would like to greet you all here today to this event, and I'd like to express my appreciation to the organizers and to all those who have helped make this rally possible right here in Houlton, Maine.
Yes.
These are indeed remarkable times and remarkable days that we find ourselves a part of. 4 weeks ago, who would have thought that we would be here at the Houlton Visitor Information Center today calling for racial equality, expanded social justice, and holding signs that say Black Lives Matter. We've seen injustice and racial violence before, but this time it feels different. Protests and rallies are continuing all across America and show no sign of abating. This time is different. How can we go back to the way things were when we have seen what we have seen and felt what we have felt? This time it is different. This time we need to make a change. This is not a time for polarization. This is not a time for increased violence, fear, and agitation. This is a time to come together as a people, to come together as fellow citizens with common concerns, to come together as one people and one nation, a nation that is equal and fair to all. This is a time to find what and where we have agreement. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "We must realize that the time is always right to do what is right."
Yes.
In this great country, it's always the right time to affirm the worth and dignity of all its people. We will not disrespect any person in this country based on ethnicity or the color of their skin. We will not discriminate against any person in this country based on ethnicity or the color of their skin. We will not physically assault any person in this great country based on ethnicity or the color of their skin. These are some of the basic rights that our country was founded upon. This is nothing new. We simply need to do the work of making it how we consistently relate to and consistently treat each other with no one left out. The current news headlines challenge us to do the work. Now is the time. Now is the time to listen to the Black voices among us and in our society. Now is the time to open our heart to the suffering and the long enduring pain of our Black brothers and sisters. Hate, bigotry, and prejudice must not tear us apart. It is love that will hold us together. Love is the common bond. Love is the healing balm of the universe. Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "Nothing at last is sacred except for the integrity of our own mind." In times like this, it is our soul that will keep us true. We must not and cannot compromise our soul or our integrity. This is what will keep us on track in the days ahead. And we do not have to do this alone. That's why it's so great to see so many people out here today in this park. We do not have to do this alone. We can do this together. We can do this together for the benefit of all and for the love of all. I would like to offer this prayer to all of us who are here today. We pray in the name of universal love and compassion that our vision may be enlarged. May we see the possibilities that we can still be. A new possibility for ourselves, a new possibility for our communities, a new possibility for our country. Even in this time of confusion, frustration, outrage, and injustice, may we hold true and strong in the hope of improvements, new aspirations, and the determination to do what we can to be a part of that change. As the darkness is dispelled by light, so our doubt will be curbed by right action. Even when it is not easy, even when it's not convenient, even when it looks like it might not be enough, it is. It is what needs to be done, and we are the ones who will do it. May our hearts include everyone, even if we disagree, even if we struggle to come together. Come together we must. In diversity is our strength. Unity is our calling. We are one people and one country on this day in June. Blessed are we all. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend
Get
Dave.
on the speaker.
And next, I would like to invite up Houlton community member Hilda Anderson.
I first off want to thank everybody for being here today. This is beautiful what is happening here. People in the community coming together for a cause. Bear with me because I'm just kind of going off the cuff here. I worked all night last night, so I haven't slept. I originally grew up in Massachusetts. When I was younger, we traveled quite a bit because my grandfather provided us the means to travel quite a bit all over the country. So by the time I was 7 years old, I'd been from California to Florida to northern Maine so quite a bit of variety in there. And ever since I was really young, my parents raised us that it didn't matter where somebody came from, what ethnicity they were, where their ancestors or they came from, what color their skin is, what language they spoke, that we were all the same, and it mattered what a person was on the inside. And that's something I carried with me always. So growing up, we had friends of all walks of life: Native Americans, Asians, blacks, browns. One of my best friends, who is like a sister to me, I lost track of her for a time, but we recently got reconnected again. She told me not that long ago, I was speaking with her on the phone last week, that me and another girl who is up in Canada, she is Micmac as well, as our previous speaker. Okay, thank you. That me and this other girl were her only true friends because we had met in 3rd grade, and she had to deal with a lot of racism because she was Puerto Rican and darker skin tone. And that just broke my heart, even after all these years, for her to come out and say that to me. So, as I said, we were raised that it didn't matter where color of skin or language or anything. So when I started dating a man from Jamaica, my parents were fine with that. They had no issues at all. People I worked with, some co-workers raised eyebrows, some comments were made, but for the most part, people thought it was a good thing. He and I went our separate ways, but I ended up with having a mixed-race daughter who I love very dearly. And we moved up to Maine, and my family helped me raise her. So raising a biracial child, my sister also had a biracial child, so she had to deal with different issues based on that. We'd go into the grocery store, and people would look at my daughter and look at me and said, "Oh, is she adopted? How cute." And I said, "No, she's not adopted. She's my actual biological daughter." And people would be aghast. When she was in 2nd grade, and this is in Maine, it's not up in northern Maine, it was southern Maine, she had some kid picking on her in class. And when I went to the teacher to address the issue, the comment was made, "Oh, the little girl," or my daughter told me, "the girl said she didn't like black." So I went to address it with the teachers. The teacher tried to brush it off, saying, "Oh, she was talking about black hair." And I just looked at her and said, "You think I'm an idiot?" A few days after that, it was some graffiti scrawled on the sidewalk outside the school. And it had the N-word in it, as well as a name that pointed to my family, one of my family members. So I went to the school again. I said, "This is an issue. There's a problem here." And one of the coordinators of the elementary school said, "Oh, our janitor went and looked at the sidewalk. He didn't find anything offensive." So I said, "Really?" And I spoke to her and I said, quoted word for word, except for the N-word I will not say. Wouldn't it be nice if the TV channels and the newspapers and the American Civil Liberties Union and everybody heard that the staff and faculty at this school feels that that is not an offensive thing? And she was taken aback by that and tried to talk her way out of that. And then she says, "Well, it's on the town property. It's not school property. There's nothing we can do about it." So I said, "I've already got the phone numbers. I've already got the names and addresses, and something is going to be done about it because you're not going to like what I'm going to do." The next day, the graffiti was spray painted over, and a couple days later it was sandblasted and the sidewalk redone. As white people in the community, up in this area and most places I've been, the racism and the oppression and the prejudice is not out and blatant. But you see words written. People make little comments. And we as white people in the community, we need to call people out on that. We need to say, "Hey, this isn't right." And make a stand, because we all are together. And I've had people at places of my employment make racial comments, drop the N-word or other mentions. And you have to call them out. As was mentioned earlier, and I like the sign that's in the back about it's not the shark, it's the water. It's not necessarily the obvious people yelling and screaming and throwing bricks or whatever. A lot of it's subdued and a lot of it's hidden. Just the day-to-day offhand comments. And I really appreciate the opportunity to come up here and speak, because a lot of people don't understand some of the issues that people go through. I'm constantly worried where my daughter is mixed. She could be walking down the sidewalk. She's had people comment about, "Hey, how much is that movie?" They assume she's a prostitute. My nephew, he goes into a store to buy a pack of cigarettes. He's immediately cornered, because they think he's in there to rob the place. So people get profiled often. I'm not saying those specific cases that's what happened, but the potential is there. So I just wanted to share my experiences based from my perspective. And again, thank everybody, the police, for being here and supporting us, and all the people, especially the speakers that are here, sharing their stories. And I just wanted to share my little piece, because this is an issue that affects everybody. And we all owe it to our neighbors, we owe it to our co-workers, we owe it to our friends, we owe it to each other, we owe it to ourselves, we owe it to the people that don't have a voice, that we need to speak out and say, Black Lives Matter. We cannot tolerate racism, we cannot tolerate any type of oppression or people treating others as something less because of the color of their skin or where they happen to come from. Another co-worker of mine, she was a refugee from Somalia. They fled to this country because in her village, men were getting killed, women were being raped. She fled to this country to try to find a safer, freer life. When I was working with her down in southern Maine, her mosque got defaced. It said, "Go home, you don't belong here." After she fled a country to escape violence and come to a country where she was hoping to have a little bit of safety for her and her family, they get greeted with that. Her job was taking care of some of the veterans who fought for these freedoms, who bled for these freedoms, and who lost comrades for these freedoms. And that's the kind of welcome that they get when they try to come to accept some of those freedoms that they believe are offered to everybody. She ended up having to leave the community because they were so afraid of what was going to happen to them. And this is something, as white people, we cannot allow that to happen. We need to be welcoming and loving and accepting of everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Hilda. Next, I would like to invite Presque Isle citizen Otis Edgecombe up to come say a few words.
Wow. I just want to say wow. Like that's the first word that comes to my head. I just want to also thank the organizers. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you to everyone who's spoken before me. But most importantly, thank you, each and every one of you. You're making a change. You're doing something important. Look at yourself and say, I'm doing something important, because that's what you're doing. Good morning, brothers and sisters.
Good morning.
My name is Otis Edgecombe. A little history about myself. I was born in Caribou, Maine, grew up and lived in Fort Fairfield, Maine, enlisted in the United States Marine Corps 2012, Semper Fi, stationed in Yuma, Arizona, as well as San Diego, California, and left active duty service July of 2019. I love this country very much, as I'm sure each of you do. One thing we preached in the Marine Corps is when you see something wrong, no matter how small or trivial you may think it may be, you should call it out, or as what we said, correct it. I see something wrong going on in America. And as a duty, as an American citizen, fellow brother and sister, I feel it is my right and privilege to put a spotlight on it. We all stand here to point out the injustice with the death of George Floyd. I feel I don't have to explain his murder in any further detail, but it has led us to this pivotal time in American history. His murder is the spark that directed me to this stage today. But what has been revealed by his death is a symptom of a much larger problem. A problem that unfortunately has plagued America for quite some time. A problem that has manifested itself in many systems and institutions that we as American citizens hold close to our hearts. We pride ourselves as a nation for being the land of the free and home of the brave. Our flag, my flag, that flag is supposed to represent and be a symbol of those ideals. It pains me to think that many of our citizens do not feel that way, and that their voices have been ignored and ostracized. Not anymore. We stand together in a chorus to all unite and say, justice for all, equal representation under the law, that we the people shall be heard and have a redress of grievances and petition our government to do better.
Yes.
To be better. To uphold the ideals and principles that will make this America, the America of today, a beacon of light and hope for future generations to be proud of and unite around. There have been so many branches that have grown from this root problem. Arguments and perspectives that have distorted this unifying message of justice and freedom. Branches that must be addressed and torn down. One man or woman cannot do it. Two men or women can't do it. I ask you all today, be the gardener of freedom and democracy. When you see a branch forming of hate and ignorance, snap it off. Cut it down. Not in an incendiary way, but in a way of understanding, logic, and empathy. The bystander effect is real. We think, well, I'm a good person. I'm not doing anything wrong. Someone else will take care of it. It's fine. My friends, that time is over. Our power must be with the people to stamp out the flames of inequality and injustice, because history has taught us that those flames will grow into fires, and those fires will encapsulate us all. We as a nation are not immune. In the words of Martin Luther King Jr., our destinies are tied together. Our paths all a butterfly effect in time. Protect your fellow brothers and sisters. Listen to your fellow citizens. And let's all agree to learn and move forward to a better tomorrow. I leave here with a personal story. As previous people who spoke before me, everyone has a perspective, everyone has a stories, and everyone's story should be heard.
Yes.
We, as a person, are just our experiences and our memories. But we, as a collective conscience, are our shared experiences and our shared memories. I share to you this memory. One day, I was driving up from Bangor, Maine to Fort Fairfield, Maine, while I was on leave from the military to visit family and friends. I don't remember the exact date, but it was around 2017 or 2018, so I would say it occurred a few years ago. I was driving, and the scenery was beautiful, so I was taking my time and enjoying it. I got off the highway, past Houlton, and as many of you know, there are small towns from here to Fort Fairfield as you go through. As I was driving, I noticed a Confederate flag outside someone's house. I thought to myself, that's peculiar. I haven't seen a Confederate flag outside of someone's house in all the years that I lived in Maine. So at that time, 20 plus years. It was something I chalked up to being an outlier. I also thought in my head that we lived in Maine, so why would they fly a Confederate flag when Maine wasn't even a part of the Confederacy? Just didn't make sense. As I kept driving, I saw another Confederate flag outside of someone's house. At this time, I was very taken aback. There was a lot of confusion and an unwelcome feeling rushed through my body. I then finally saw a third Confederate flag as I was driving. My first response after seeing the third flag, and this is something I strongly recommend against, was anger. I thought, why are they flying that flag? Why am I, a young half-black, half-white male from northern Maine, seeing these flags as I am driving home on leave from the military? Why would you fly a flag that has caused so much pain and so much anguish to so many people? Tradition? A sense of belonging? A sense of history? It was a painful time for me, and a lot of soul searching was done that day. I say that story to end with this. Change is hard. Change sometimes can be scary. Change makes you look in the mirror and look at past actions that you or someone you know may have done. At that time, you may have had the best intentions. You may be a kind person with a pure heart, but past actions in the name of tradition, in the name of belonging, or in the name of some misguided view of the world can still be wrong. What's wrong is wrong, and what's right is right. And if you refuse to listen to your fellow brothers and sisters, if you refuse to hear their pain and their struggles, their cries for help, then maybe it's you that needs to change. I love, I don't know if you guys know Sam Cooke, but he sings the song Change Is A Comin'. Hey, change is a comin'.
Yeah.
With or without your approval. Thank you, Black Lives Matter.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Otis. Next, I'd like to invite up Roz Morgan, community member Roz Morgan. Come on up.
Okay. Okay.
Have to juggle the mask, the glasses, the whole fun thing. So, we moved here about 37 years ago. 37 years and a few days ago. And when we planned this move, the elders in my family were concerned. They were scared. They said, "No, you can't go up there. There's mostly white folks, and you might get lynched." And they were serious.
Yeah.
Okay, understand that what they had seen in their lives led them to be greatly concerned. Of course, the younger generation, we were like, we can handle anything. No problem. And thankfully, their fears were never met. I'm here. Yay. But I have to say that within the first couple of days that we were here, in a store in this town, I had more than one person come up to me and say, "We don't mind black people. It's those damn Indians we can't stand."
Oh, Jesus.
Now, if that's not telling, I'm not sure what else is. I mean, open your eyes to that. Think about that for a moment. You would walk up to a total stranger. You've made an assumption based on looking at that person, and you felt that you were okay in saying that to that person. But here's the fun part. When I smiled at them and said, "But I am part Indian." The number of people, it was either, "Oh." Step back. Then there's the, "Well, I'm sure you're one of the good ones."
Yeah.
That gave me some grounding as to what was real. I am a child born in the 50s. I am older than the Civil Rights Act. When I was little, we went down to see family in South Carolina, and I saw signs that said, "Colored, white." Okay, that's my lifetime. The number of things that continued, it was better than what my parents and my grandparents had gone through. Certainly, no ifs, ands, or buts, but obviously there's this lingering thing that has continued to go along. Now, in addition to the first couple of days, in the 37 years I've lived here, there's been the occasions when someone, not coming to my face, but rather someplace close enough that they knew they were overheard, would drop the N-word, just to see if you can get a rise out of me. Please note, I have not punched anyone. Not once. Not for that. Okay. Let me correct that. Not for that. Early on, we noticed that there were people who would look up and go, "Oh, it's salt and pepper coming."
Oh, Jesus.
Salt and pepper. Okay, well, I'm not going to give you a rise out of that. I will make eye contact with you, but you do what you want with that. Imagine my surprise when just a couple of years ago, now, the salt and pepper thing was from quite a while back. Just a couple of years ago, I came to understand that there are still people who call us that. That is something that is deeply ingrained. They may not have a real negative intent, but it helps inform their lives and how they interact within the world, and it helps inform the young people who are watching, and they stick that in their back pocket as part of what is familiar. We need to change what is familiar. I've even been stopped while driving black in Aroostook County. Now, this was a younger me, less of me. Admittedly, at the time, I'm pretty sure I was wearing a bandana because, as most of you who do know me know, I used to wear a bandana all the time. And it was not here in town, but I'm just going to leave it at it was Aroostook County. We were coming up a hill, and the vehicle I was driving at the time would not have sped up that hill if I got out and pushed it. The lights were fine, everything was well, but I looked up to see the flashing light. I pulled over, and as I pulled over, I did what we are trained to do. You make sure your hands are visible.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, you do let the window down, but your hands are visible. What I saw was an officer step out of his vehicle and immediately thumb the strap on his holster and then place his hand on the butt of his gun. He didn't draw it, but still, he's ready for some action here, and I'm thinking, what the heck did I just do? I can't think of anything. When he gets to the car, he takes a good look at me and he goes, "Oh, ma'am. I'm sorry, it's just a routine stop." So, yeah, sometimes I'm a little androgynous, perhaps, in appearance, whatever. But that was his, he had nothing else going on. He hadn't seen me do anything wrong. He saw me driving up the street and felt the need to do that. This is real, this is here.
Mm-hmm.
This is here not just in our county, it's in our state, it's in our country. And we are part of this country. We're not some separate little enclave. We come, we go, and we take our ideas and our actions with us, and we need to do better. We need to listen to each other. We need to look out for each other. There's a store up in the mall in Presque Isle that I will not shop at anymore, because every time I went in there, someone would separate themselves, as far as staff, and basically follow me around the store. I didn't see that happening with anyone other than I'd look around and it would be another brown person. You'd see that happening. That's a microaggression, if you wish to call it that. Whatever it is, it's still telling you something. It is making you feel more of that difference. It is empowering them. Back in the day, you used to cross the border all the time. We have friends in Canada, we shop in Canada, we travel, we visit, all that fun stuff. If we came across the border and I was driving, wasn't driving, I was riding, there we go. If I'm the passenger in the vehicle, more likely to have the person speak, obviously, to the driver, but then stick their head into the vehicle and get me to say something. They were looking for an accent. I was so tempted to say, "Hey, Mom, you got some ganja?" Just it, but it wasn't worth the agita that would come from that. Okay, just wasn't worth the grief. Forget that. But we tried it a few times. Okay, I drive most of the time for us because I love to drive. She doesn't like to drive as much. Cool. Or I should say she likes to be chauffeured. That's a different story. But if we swapped, inevitably, that's the time for the scrutiny. It's here, folks, and I particularly love the folks who would, "You're from where?" I live in Linus. I don't know you. Okay, I just want to point out to you, officer, there's at any given point 6,000 to 7,000 people who live in Houlton. Throw another 600 to 700 that live in Linus, and so forth. And I've lived here for, I tell them whatever the amount of years were at that point. And they're kind of, so I start throwing out some names. So do you know so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so? And so-and-so and so-and-so. And these are people who were born, raised here. And they never apologize, they just dropped that line. But it happened more than once. Those little bits and pieces that, as I say, they make things normalized that should not be. When we speak about each other and we say, a black, or using, thank heavens Maine has managed to get around to dropping the word squaw from the names of many of the lakes and ponds in this state. For that, I am proud of the state of Maine. Because when I first got here, there was a bunch of those, okay? But people drop those words without thinking about it. They didn't mean anything bad, but we've taken the humanity out. We've done a little separation, put things off to the side there. Back in the 70s, I was part of my high school's marching band, and we marched at Mardi Gras. Yay! Oh my God! We made the trip! Yay! A little northern band from Washington D.C. I know it's the south from here, but by comparison to Louisiana, that was the north. And imagine our shock when one of the many parades we were in, people stood along the sides, called us the N-word, demanded we play Dixie for them, spat on us, and one of my bandmates, they actually tried to pull out of our ranks at a point as we were going through very slowly. She was about yay tall. We grabbed her, pulled her back and stuck her in the middle, which just messed our line up altogether, but who cares? Those are the things that don't happen as much, but that's what part of my experience is. And those other people were seeing that, embracing it or ignoring it. The crowd didn't stop and, oh no, don't do that. We all need to do that. When we see someone do something, when we hear someone do something, step up. Interject yourself. Please. Pretty please. It'll help all of us out, ultimately. I was shocked to discover that here in the far north, you were shocked to see Confederate flags. I mean, after all, they lost, right? We don't have a statue of King George in Market Square, do we? We beat them. But when I got here, and later, it's only more recently that I discovered the Klan was here.
Oh yeah.
Really? Mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. But then I thought about it. Okay, human beings are here. We humans, we have a tendency to find us and them, no matter what. And so, of course, they were here. I would like to think that we will not see another such march happen here. I wasn't here for that one. Thank you, universe, for that one. We have work to do. There will always be work. The older generation saw things happen, put in effort, and things changed. Everything did not change. My generation saw things happening and put in work, and things changed. It is an ongoing process, and we have a tendency to have a short memory and a short attention span, and we think, done the work, it's over. No, the next generation is going to have to keep working. Okay? The next generation, along with the current adults in the room and the old farts, I'm one of the old farts, I'm good with that. We have to keep working. This is going to be a continuum. And I thank all of you for coming and being willing to listen. And I want you to be willing to have conversations with the people in your lives and the strangers that you encounter. And understand that everybody's story has multiple sides. Even a coin has actually more than two sides if you look at the rim. Some coins even have nice geometric patch, shapes that give them additional sides. There's more to it. If we talk to each other, if we keep communication open, if we keep our cool and our persistence, we can continue to improve. And we're going to do the standard thing. You're going to take some steps forward, and then you're going to take some steps back. And some forward, and as long as the steps forward outnumber the steps backward, this is good. What's happening here today is marvelous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roz. Okay, we're going to move on to our call of action with Alicia. So Alicia, come on up.
Thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Alicia Targonsky. I grew up in this area and I'm proud to call it home. I'm so proud today and grateful to all of our wonderful speakers, the organizing team that we have here. It's a great first step. And I want to thank the audience for coming with your open hearts and listening, because we're here together and I appreciate you and all the work that you're doing listening here today. If, like me, you've listened to our speakers today and you have felt pain, if you have listened to our speakers today and you have felt uncomfortable, thank you. You're doing the work. But what do we do with our pain? What do we do with our discomfort? How do we progress forward as a community together, but better? I'm calling you to 4 actions today. They're not scary, I promise. They're small, they're doable, but they are the personal work that you are going to have to commit to make change happen, to keep moving the needle on a personal level, but also within your system, whatever system that is. Education, healthcare, justice, government. Thank you. First, you have to actively invest in bringing diversity into your life. What does something look like when it serves Black and Native and brown people best? What does that model look like when it was made by people who do not look like you, who do not worship like you, who do not think like you? You need to add voices into your library at home, into your podcasts, into your social media. Keep getting challenged beyond just this one day. You must commit to being a lifelong learner when it comes to racial equity. Second, you must support young people. However they come to you, support them, defend them loudly. Teach them empathy and kindness. Regardless of race, gender, ability level, sexuality, socioeconomic class, these kids need you more now than ever, and you have to love them.
Yes.
And you have to give them a community they want to stay in. Third, you need to vote. You need to vote in every election, every year. There are decisions being made and you're not in the room. So you need to show up. They decide how we educate, how we prosecute, how we protect, how we serve people in our communities. And if you're not in the room, you're not part of that discussion. So show up to those meetings, show up to those budget hearings, and keep pushing. The final action I have for you is you have to be visible. You showed up here, and together we are visible on this one day. But we scatter, and it is so easy to feel isolated again. People are craving a community that supports them just to thrive. So use whatever power or voice you have to create space, to create gatherings, to build connections. So put up a flag, put up a sign, whatever or however you support people. Because if you don't, you become invisible. You cannot be an ally to a movement if people in that movement cannot see you. It is up to all of us to hold ourselves accountable, to do better, to be better. No one is perfect doing equity work. You are going to make mistakes, and that's okay, as long as you keep going and keep pushing. Do this work from a position of love and compassion for each other. And if you told 18-year-old me, who could not get out of Aroostook County fast enough, for Worcester of all places, that the lessons I learned in this community from mentors that I love to this day on empathy and showing up for other people, integrity and kindness, all those lessons I learned in this community. If you told me that I'd be organizing something like this and that we would have people actually show up, I wouldn't have believed you. But I believe today. Today we're showing up and doing something. This is a community that creates people that will show up and do something. So let that be our new status quo. Thank you.
Thanks, Alicia. I'd like to invite Lieutenant Adrienne Aponte up from the Houlton Salvation Army. Okay.
Well, how's everyone doing today? Yeah? Probably a little better than I was. You know, I'm being a preacher and I still get those little nerves that you gotta sit yourself through, even in my congregation. But the Lord provides it, man. And let me tell you a little about myself. I'm Lieutenant Adrienne Aponte from the Houlton Main Corps. I'm not originally from Houlton, I'm from Delaware. So I've been here for 2 years, stationed as my first appointment since I graduated from the training school. One of my earliest memories as a teenager, I might have been 13, 14 years old, was one day me and my father was going into a Radio Shack, when there was Radio Shack back then. And besides a Popeye, I see this young, black, maybe 5-year-old kid standing with, I don't know if it was his father or a friend, but he said something that was, the conversation was really sad. He said, when I grow up, I want to be an officer, a cop. But immediately that gentleman says, you don't want to be a cop, they're bad. They can't be trusted. That was over maybe 15 years ago since that happened. I'm 30. The incident with George Floyd shocked me to my core because it's something that, a battle that we thought was won yesterday, we're still fighting today. You know, the 14th Amendment of our United States says that we have all citizens have equal rights, both federal and state. The meaning of how I take Black Lives Matter, and the best way I can describe it is when someone said it on the news, it's a form of lament. If you don't know what the word lament means, it means to be in anguish, to be in suffering, to be in pain. And when we support that motion, and yes, I believe that all lives matter, but how could that be true when freedom is stolen from a race? Amen? And that's where, if we really want to say all lives matter, we should mean that. But also to be supporting those who take it harshly. I have many Black friends. I have Black mentors who are officers. I have a mentor that I spoke to yesterday who's over 80 years old. He's experienced the civil rights movement. He's experienced hatred and racism. He's experienced that. I am formed because of their influence. This brand is against me, but I'm with God, so amen. There's a deeper and worse disease than racism, and that's hatred. That's hate. Hate is the heart of racism. It's more sinister, it's more sneaky, it's more cunning. It's in many forms. It's a lack of understanding and full of fear of the unknown. And granted, we're human, we fear, yes, but we can't use fear as a justification for racism. We have to have conversations. We have to talk. Amen. In the Bible, in the book of Job, Job had everything stolen from him. His children were killed. His property was gone. And then in the Jewish customs, they rip off their clothing as a sense of lament, of a sense of anguish and pain and suffering. He was covered by warts, painful warts. His wife even said, "Why don't you curse God? Look at what he's doing to you." Even his friends, at the end of it, turned away from him. But before that, there was an important act that they did to show that they understood the pain that Job was going through. They, them too, tore off their clothes in anguish, and they huddled around them. That's what the Black Lives Matter means. When we see a fellow brother or sister in anguish and in pain, we're huddling around them. It's a lament. Think about it. We're all wearing black. Well, when do you wear black? In a funeral. Doesn't that show you something? Another story, and this is involving my mother that my father just recently told me. I'm Puerto Rican Honduran. My father served in the military as a special forces, and he was stationed in South America and Central America. That's where he met my mom. And when they came to the United States, though my mom had a Panamanian license, she had to go for a U.S. license. So she goes to the DMV, she does the test, but she has a problem because she's not fluent in English. And she fails because of misunderstanding the flicking of the headlights. The woman was keep on saying, "Leave them on," but my mom didn't understand that. And then later on, she failed him. And my father's the type who defends my mom very harshly, so don't get on his bad sides about that. and this is not the first time he ever defended my mom in regards to racism. He comes to this lady and says, "Why did you fail my wife? She obviously knew where the headlights were, how to operate them. She's fully knowledgeable about that. Why did you fail?" Her response was this: "Well, your wife needs to stop watching novellas in Telemundo. She's in the United States. She needs to learn English." That ticked my father off something. The moment he went home, he called her boss and demanded that she, that she get penalized for that. There was no purpose for that. Completely off. So the boss says, "Well, bring your wife over tomorrow and we'll deal with it." So the boss talks to, does the inspection, and my mom passes. And he penalizes that employee. Sorry. The most shocking part of this story, however, is that the woman that failed my mother was Puerto Rican.
Holy cow.
And her boss was white. Racism comes in many colors and forms. But when we see it as clear as black and white on a television screen, how can you not speak up on that? Amen. A little bit about George Floyd is that he used to volunteer and serve in the Salvation Army, in the shelters, helping people. I saw a video of him on Facebook talking to the people in his community, saying that we need to stop killing each other. We have to be in peace. It's not about that. God loves us. Testifying about God and how Jesus loves everyone. And when Minnesota Salvation Army presented the flag of promotion of glory, that really touched my heart. I had to rush earlier today because I wanted to show you something. This is the flag of the Salvation Army. And the flag that was presented over the place where George Floyd was killed, the monument does. The Minnesota Corps presented the flag to promote it to glory. It was a lot bigger than this, and it had the words. But the words right here says blood and fire. Speaking about the blood that was shredded by Jesus Christ, and then the fire of the Holy Spirit that is meant to consume us by rebuilding, not destroy, but fill us. Like the fiery furnace that could not torture Rashak, Meshach, and Abednego. It was a roaring, rebuilding kingdom fire. And I would like to give this to this movement, Black Lives. This one is this was put on me when I was an accepted candidate to go into training school. And I would like to present this as a fallen soldier for George Floyd. The daughter of our founder, William Booth, Evangeline Booth, once said, "There is no reward equal to that of doing the most good to the most people in the most need." Right now, the most people in the most need is the black community. For generations and generations, they have felt completely ignored, being backlashed, being stereotyped. Martin Luther King said that life's most present and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? He also said that I have decided to stick with love And hate is great of a burden. I've had hate in my heart because of racism. I've had hate in my heart with those of my own ethnicity because I had grew up with not knowing Spanish that well, and I was considered a gringo, an Americano, someone who did not fit in, a wolf that can't howl, a duck that can't quack. I know the pain of hate, but that, just like I said earlier, it spreads like a cancer. It destroys everything. And Martin Luther King Jr. was a preacher of building something, not destroying. Building up the community of the oppressed and those who've been suffered injustice. Building on that foundation. The church is the body of Christ. And Christ offers that freely to everyone. One body, one spirit, one hope, one love. Love. I want everyone to look at each other and say, I love you. And your life matters. Now turn to another person and say, I love you. Your life matters.
And your life matters.
We all know the story of the Good Samaritan. But I think something gets overlooked. We have a preacher and we have a Levite that misses out and sees this man who was basically left naked, beaten, robbed. And then the Samaritan looked, took him to an inn, paid for 2 weeks worth to stay. And he says to the innkeeper, well, anything else to spend, I will cover that too. And the beginning of that story was when Jesus says, who do you say my neighbor is? He says, the one that shows mercy. The word mercy means showing undeserved love. Not unconditional. That's grace. Undeserved. Which means that the people, the Samaritans, who had years and years of mistreatment towards the Israelites, had so much reasons to hate them, yet he felt compelled to help this man who's half dead. They were segregated up north of Jerusalem, where they had to pray to God on the mountaintops and not in the temples because they were considered unpure. Yet this Samaritan showed mercy. And today we call for mercy because Christ calls us his friends. It says, anyone who claims to be in the light but hates his brother and sister is still walking in darkness. Everyone that hates his brother is a murderer. You know that there's no eternal life that can reside in a murderer. When you hate someone, you're dead inside. There's no life. Christ calls us to come alive. He calls us to stand up like Lazarus when he visited his tomb. He says, Lazarus, come forth. And a dead man rose. He calls our names as well. And I'd like to end with one last point. And that comes from John 15:13. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for a friend. Christ lays his life down for our sins. We should lay our lives down from the injustice that's happening all across this world, all across the United States.
Fuck my water bottle.
Thank you all again for showing up and for